The lock clicked. Seraphine Hale froze over the sink, her hands still wet, her face. Still wet, her breath caught somewhere between a mump and a scream. She hadn't heard him come in. Nobody ever heard Ronan Vale come in. That was the point. Turn around. His voice was quiet. Too quiet. I said turn around, Miss Hale. She obeyed because her body had been trained to obey men for so long it no longer asked permission from her mind. And when she faced him, he looked at her tears and he asked the one question no one had ever asked her before. Who hurt you? Before we step into this kitchen with Seraphine and Ronan, please take 1 second to subscribe to the channel and hit that little bell so you never miss a story like this one. And as the story unfolds tonight, drop the name of the city you're watching from down in the comments. I love reading where in the world my stories are traveling. Now let's go back to that locked door and to the moment a powerful man asked a broken woman a question that would change both their lives forever. Seraphine didn't answer. She couldn't. Her throat had sealed shut the way it always did when a man raised his voice in her direction, even when Ronan Vale hadn't raised his voice at all. That was somehow worse. A raised voice she understood. A raised voice had rules. But this low, even terrible calm was a language she didn't speak. Miss Hale, he stepped forward once. Just once. I don't ask questions twice, you already know that. I'm fine, sir. The words came out of her the way they always came out of her polished, rehearsed dead. I apologize. I didn't mean to disturb the house. I'll finish the dishes and go. You're not finishing anything. Sir, sit down. Sir, please. Sit down. She sat, not because he forced her. He hadn't moved. She sat because her knees decided for her the way her knees had been deciding for her for almost 3 years now. She folded her hands in her lap so he wouldn't see them shaking, but her hands had betrayed her before, and they betrayed her now, trembling visibly against the black fabric of her uniform. Ronan Vale sat across from her. He didn't pull the chair close. He didn't tower. He didn't lean in. He simply placed himself at the opposite end of the kitchen island and folded his hands exactly the way she had folded hers, and for a split second, Seraphine felt the strangest sensation she felt seen. It terrified her more than being yelled at. How long have you worked in this house, Miss Hale? 11 months, sir. 11 months, he repeated. In 11 months, I have watched you flinch at every door that opens. I have watched you eat alone in the service pantry instead of the staff dining room. I have watched you refuse 3 pay raises because you were afraid taking them would make someone notice you. I notice you, Miss Hale. I've been noticing you for 11 months. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Now, he said, I'll ask you again. Who hurt you? Nobody, sir. Nobody hurt me. Miss Hale. It's an old thing. It's nothing. Miss Hale. Please, Mr. Vale. Say his name. The air left her lungs so fast it made a small sound like paper tearing. She stared down at her hands. She tried to swallow. She tried to stand. She tried to apologize. She tried every single door that had ever worked for her in her life, and every single one of them would look it from the outside because Ronan Vale had locked them. Graham, she whispered. Graham what? Graham Ashford. Ronan Vale did not react, but something in the kitchen changed. Seraphine felt it before she understood it, the same way animals feel a storm 10 minutes before the thunder. The man across from her had gone very, very still in a way that suggested he had gone still many times before in rooms far less friendly than this one. Keep going, he said. Sir, I don't want to cause... You are not causing anything. He is. Keep going. And so for the first time in her life, with her hands shaking and her voice breaking and her eyes refusing to lift from the grain of the countertop, Seraphine Hale began to tell the truth. We were engaged, she said, for 2 years. I met him when I was 23. He was older. Everyone said he was a catch. My mother cried when he proposed. She said I'd finally done something right. She laughed, and the laugh was the saddest sound in the room. She's been dead 8 months, and I've been too afraid to go to her grave because I know he watches it. He watches your mother's grave. He watches everything, sir. Define everything. My phone, my email, my bank. I don't have a bank anymore. I have an envelope of cash I keep inside my mattress. I can't sign a lease because he'll find the lease. I can't sign a job application because he'll find the job. I can only work in places where people are paid off the books or places where they pay in cash and don't ask questions. That's why I applied here, sir. Because the woman in the hiring office said your house pays in cash if you prefer it, and her voice caught, nobody asked questions. Nobody asked questions in this house, Ronan said quietly. Because in this house, I'm the one who asked the questions. Yes, sir. And tonight I'm asking them. Yes, sir. He let a beat of silence pass. She expected him to fill cut. He didn't. He let it sit there between them like a weight, and she realized after a long moment that he was doing it on purpose, giving her room, letting her breathe, letting her gather the next piece before he reached for it. It was the gentlest thing a man had done for her in 3 years, and he hadn't even moved. How did he find out you were here? He hasn't yet. You said yet. I say yet about everything, sir. That's how I live. I don't say if, I say yet. If I say if, I start to hope, and if I start to hope, I stop being careful, and if I stop being careful, he finds me. So I say yet. For the first time that night, Ronan Vale looked away from her. It was such a small movement. His eyes dropped to the countertop for half a second, but Seraphine caught it, and she understood in that half second that she had said something that had landed somewhere inside this man she did not understand. Then his eyes came back up. Tell me what he threatened to do. Sir, Miss Hale, tell me what he threatened to do. She closed her eyes. He said if I left, he would tell my employers I stole from him. He said he had photographs of me. I never posed for photographs, sir. I don't know what photographs, he said he had them, and he would send them to my father's church, and my father is a deacon. My father is 71 years old, and he said he would send them. He said he had a friend at the state licensing board, and my cosmetology license would disappear, and I wouldn't be able to work legally anywhere in this country. He said he would tell every man I ever dated after him that I was things I wasn't. He said my mother would die of shame, and then my mother did of cancer. And he told me at her funeral, sir, he stood next to her casket and he said, see, I told you she'd die of shame. He said that, sir, over her grave. Her hands were no longer shaking. They were clenched. She noticed this with mild surprise, as if her hands belonged to another woman. A woman who was angry, a woman who had a right to be angry, a woman she used to be a long time ago. Across the island, Ronan Vale had not moved, but his right hand folded over his left had slowly uncurled, and one finger was tapping just once. Then again, a quiet metronome of something terrible being calculated under a perfectly calm face. His name again, Graham Ashford, of the Ashford family that owns the brokerage on Madison. Her head snapped up. You know him. I know of him. Oh God. Miss Hale. Oh God, no, please, sir, please, I didn't know you knew. Him, I'll leave tonight. I'll pack right now. I swear I won't say anything. I swear I didn't come here because of... Miss Hale, stop. I swear I didn't know he was connected to... I'll just go. Please don't tell him I was here. Please, Seraphine, her name. He said her name. She had worked in his house for 11 months, and he had never once called her anything but Miss Hale. And now he said Seraphine, and it stopped her the way a hand on the shoulder stops a person running toward a cliff. Sit back down. She realized she was standing. She didn't remember standing. She sat. I know of him. Ronan said the way a man knows of a rat inside the walls of his building. I don't live with him. I don't eat with him. I don't associate with him. But I know he's there, and I know what he chews on, and I know the noise he makes at night. Are we clear? Yes, sir. You did not come here because of him. No, sir. You came here because the hiring office pays in cash and doesn't ask questions. Yes, sir. Then you are here because of me, not because of him. Yes, sir. Good. Now look at me. It took her a full 10 seconds to lift her eyes. When she did, she expected what she had always seen in men's faces when she finally looked up. Appetite, amusement, pity, impatience, the calculation of what she could be used for. She was braced for all of it. She saw none of it. Ronan Vale was simply watching her. The way a man watches a ledger he intends to balance. The way a man watches a door he intends to walk through. The way a man watches a problem he intends to solve, not because the problem moves him, but because the problem exists, and problems that exist inside his house are his to address. I am not, he said, going to save you. Her breath caught. I want you to hear that. I am not your rescuer. I am not your knight. I am not going to tell you pretty things and promise you pretty things and ride in on a white horse like some fool in a movie your mother watched. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. But one word and every bone in her body leaned toward it. But a man walked into my house through you. He walked into my house the moment you walked into my house because his fear lives inside you, and his fear has been standing at my kitchen sink for 11 months. And tonight his fear made you cry on my floor. That is not acceptable to me. Not because of you, because of him. Do you hear the difference? I hear it. Say it back. It's not about saving me. It's about him walking into your house. Correct. When a man walks into my house without permission, Miss Hale, I address it. That is not charity. That is not kindness. That is not romance. That is the rule of my house. You understand the rule of my house? I think I do, sir. Good. Then we understand each other. He unfolded his hands. He stood. She flinched, an old flinch, a deep flinch, a flinch that had nothing to do with him, and he saw the flinch, and he paused, and he sat back down. He sat back down. A powerful man in his own house, in the middle of his own sentence, sat back down because a maid had flinched. It was such a small thing. It was the biggest thing that had happened to Seraphine Hale in 3 years. I'll stay seated, he said, until you finish talking. Is there more? There's one more thing. Tell me. He has a book. A notebook. Black, small. He carries it in his inside pocket. He showed it to me once. He said it had names in it. He said the names in it were people who owed him things, and people who he owed things to, and people he could hurt, and people who could hurt him back. He said my name was in it. He said if I ever left, a line would be drawn through my name, and a line drawn through a name in that book meant something bad. He laughed when he said it. He kissed my forehead when he said it. You've seen this book? Once. You can describe it. Black leather, about the size of a passport. Gold corner on the front right. He keeps a rubber band around it because the spine is cracked. Ronan Vale was silent for a long moment. Then he said quietly, "Thank you, Miss Hale. That is a very helpful detail." "Sir, go to bed." "Sir, go to bed, Miss Hale. You have work in 6 hours. In this house, maids who don't sleep do not perform their duties well, and I pay for duties to be performed well. Go to bed." She rose, her legs barely held her. She crossed to the doorway and paused with her hand on the frame because her mother had taught her that when a man extends you a kindness, you do not leave the room without acknowledging it, even if you don't know what to say. "Mr. Vale, Miss Hale, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Sir, you haven't seen what I'm going to do. When you see what I'm going to do, you may not want to thank me. You may find that a frightening thing. I want you to know right now, before you walk out of this room, I will not hurt you. I will not touch you. I will not ask anything of you. What happens next happens outside this house, outside your sight, and you will not be required to participate in any of it. Your only job, Miss Hale, is to sleep tonight. Can you do that?" "I'll try." "Try harder." "Yes, sir." "And Miss Hale?" "Yes, sir." "The door to your room has a lock. I know because I had it installed 11 months ago, the week you moved in. I never told you that because I didn't want to frighten you. I'm telling you now. Use it. Good night." She walked out of the kitchen on legs she couldn't feel. She climbed the back stairs to the staff floor on a spine that felt like it belonged to someone taller. She reached her room and she saw the lock. Really saw the lock for the first time in 11 months. A small brass thing above the handle. Simple, quiet, completely unremarkable. And she understood that a man she had been afraid of for 11 months had been quietly protecting her for 11 months and had not told her because telling her would have scared her more than the lock would have saved her. She sat on the edge of her bed. She did not cry. She realized with a strange, small shock that she could not remember the last time she had sat on the edge of a bed and not cried. Downstairs in the kitchen, Ronan Vale had not moved from his chair. His phone was in his hand. He was looking at a contact in his phone he had not opened in 4 years, and his thumb was hovering over the call button, and his face was perfectly calm. He pressed it. "It's Vale," he said when the line picked up. "I need a favor. It's about a man named Graham Ashford and a black notebook, and a line he drew through a name that belongs to me." On the other end of the line, a voice Seraphine Hale would never hear, in a city Seraphine Hale would never visit, said something very short. Ronan Vale nodded once. Good, he said. Start tonight. And upstairs, for the first time in 3 years, Seraphine Hale turned the lock on her bedroom door, and she lay down on top of the covers, and she slept. She did not know that 2 floors below her, a man was already making phone calls in a voice so quiet the walls didn't hear him. She did not know that by sunrise, a black notebook would be missing from an inside jacket pocket 3 miles away. She did not know that Graham Ashford at that very moment was sitting in a restaurant on the Upper East Side, laughing at a joke holding a glass of wine, and that the waiter bringing his check was not a waiter at all. She did not know any of it. She only knew that for the first time in a very long time, she had locked her own door, and no one on the other side of it was angry with her, and nothing bad was coming for her through it tonight. And in the kitchen, Ronan Vale picked up her empty teacup and her used napkin, and the spoon she had stirred nothing with, and he carried them to the sink, and he washed them himself. She woke at 5:42 in the morning, 3 minutes before her alarm, which was exactly when she always woke because her body had decided 3 years ago that beating the alarm was safer than trusting the alarm. For the first 15 seconds, she did not remember what had happened in the kitchen. For the next 15 seconds, she remembered it all at once, and she sat up so fast the blood left her head and the room tilted. She did not cry. That was the first strange thing. The second strange thing was that she walked to her door and she looked at the lock, small brass, unremarkable lock, and she understood that she had slept behind it for the first time in 11 months, and that the man who had installed it had known every single night for 11 months that she had not been using it and had said nothing and had waited. She turned the lock back. She opened the door. The hallway was quiet. The house was quiet. Everything was quiet the way Ronan Vale's house was always quiet, but today the quiet felt different. It felt like a held breath. It felt like a room where something had already been decided and she had not been invited into the decision. Miss Hale, she jumped. Mr. Darby, the head of household staff, a man who had worked in this penthouse for 19 years and who had never once in 11 months addressed her by name, was standing at the end of the hallway with a folded uniform over his arm. Yes, sir. Not sir, please. Just Darby. His voice was not warm. Mr. Darby's voice had never been warm in his life. But it was not cold either, and in 11 months she had only known it to be cold. Your schedule has been adjusted. You will not be working the main floor today. You will be working the library alone with the door closed. You will take your meals in the staff dining room. A chair has been pulled out for you. Your name is on it. My name. On a brass plate? On the back of the chair. Mr. Vale had it installed at 4 o'clock this morning. Her hand went to her mouth. Miss Hale, are you all right? Because if you are not all right, I have been instructed to tell you that you are not required to work today. I have been instructed to tell you that in this house, for as long as you are in it, the question of whether you are all right supersedes the question of whether the silver has been polished. Mr. Vale asked me to repeat that to you in exactly those words. I have now repeated them. Are you all right, Miss Hale? I don't know, Mr. Darby. An honest answer. Thank you. The library then. When you're ready. He walked away. He did not look back. Seraphine stood in the hallway in her bare feet, holding the folded uniform he had placed in her hands, and she realized the uniform was new. Not washed, new, still stiff at the collar, still smelling of the factory. Her old uniform, the one she had worn last night, the one she had cried into, was gone. Downstairs on the 39th floor, Ronan Vale was not in the kitchen. He was in his study on his second phone call of the morning, and the person on the other end of the line was not happy. You understand what you're asking me to do, I'm not asking you to do anything, Ronan said. That you haven't already done twice this year for less interesting reasons. I'm asking you for a name, one name, the friend at the licensing board. Vale, the name. Why? Because last night a woman in my house told me that her cosmetology license is being held hostage by a rat named Ashford, and I would like to return the license to its rightful owner, and I would like to do it in a way that makes the rat understand, without me having to explain it to him in person, that a line has been redrawn through a name, and the name on the line is no longer hers. A long silence on the line. You've never involved yourself in something like this before, Vale. Correct. Why now? Because she said the word yet. Give me the name. Another silence. Then a name. Ronan wrote it down in pen on the corner of a newspaper. He did not thank the caller. He hung up. 2 floors above him, Seraphine was pulling on the new uniform in front of the small mirror in her bathroom, and her hands were shaking again, but for an entirely different reason this time, and she did not fully understand the reason yet, and she was afraid to understand it. She went to the library. The door was open. A tray was waiting on the small writing desk by the window. Tea toast, a single soft-boiled egg in a porcelain cup, a little silver spoon. There was a folded note under the teapot. She unfolded it with fingers that did not want to cooperate. Miss Hale eat, RV. That was all. She ate. She did not want to, and then she ate, and then she was shocked to find that she was hungry, ravenously. Violently hungry in the way a person is hungry when they have finally stopped being afraid long enough for their body to remember it has needs. She ate the toast. She ate the egg. She drank the tea. She cried once quietly into the napkin, and then she stopped crying and she folded the napkin and she went to work on the library shelves because that was what she had been told to do. And being told what to do by a man was still the only language her body fully trusted. At 9:17 in the morning, the lobby buzzer rang. Mr. Darby answered it on the house intercom. His voice, when it came back, was perfectly flat. Mr. Vale, there is a gentleman in the lobby who is requesting to see you. Name, Graham Ashford. In the library, Seraphine dropped a book. She did not hear it hit the floor. She heard Mr. Darby's voice through the intercom system that ran in every room of the penthouse, a system she had been told during her orientation to ignore. And she heard the name, and her knees stopped working, and she slid down the side of the bookshelf until she was sitting on the floor with her back against the wood, and her hands pressed over her mouth and the dropped book open face down beside her on the carpet. He knows, he knows, he knows, he knows. Send him up, Ronan said. Seraphine stopped breathing. Mr. Vale. I said send him up, Darby. Very good, sir. And Miss Hale is in the library. She will stay in the library. The library door will be closed, and the library door will be locked, and nobody will disturb her until I come to the library myself. Am I clear? Perfectly clear, sir. The intercom clicked off. Seraphine was not breathing. Her chest had forgotten how. She heard very faintly footsteps in the hallway outside the library, and then the small, almost inaudible click of a lock being turned. Not to lock her in, she understood somehow, but to lock him out. And then the footsteps moved on, and she was alone, and she sat there on the floor with her hands over her mouth, and she waited. 3 floors below, the private elevator rose. In the foyer of the penthouse, Ronan Vale straightened his tie. He did not do this for Ashford. He did it because a man's tie was the small discipline a man performed for himself before he entered a room he intended to leave in better condition than he had found it. The elevator opened. Ronan Vale, said Graham Ashford, walking out of the elevator with his hand extended and a smile on his face that Seraphine Hale would have recognized from a mile away in a crowded airport, the smile he wore when he was about to hurt someone and wanted them to feel grateful for the hurting. Thank you for seeing me on short notice. Ronan Vale did not take the extended hand. Mr. Ashford, I apologize for the hour. I know you're a busy man. I am a busy man. What do you want? The smile on Graham Ashford's face flickered just once, just a fraction of a second, and then it came back slightly thinner, slightly harder. I understand there's a young woman working in your household. Dark hair, about this tall. Her name is Seraphine Hale. You understand incorrectly. I'm sorry. There is no young woman working in my household by that name. Mr. Vale, I employ 42 people, Mr. Ashford. I do not know any of their names. That is what I employ Mr. Darby for. Darby? Yes, sir. Is there a Seraphine Hale on staff? No, sir. Was there ever a Seraphine Hale on staff? Not on my record, sir. There you have it, Mr. Ashford. Is there anything else? Graham Ashford's jaw worked. Just once. A tiny muscle in his cheek. Ronan Vale saw it and filed it and did not react to it, but somewhere inside his perfectly still body, a switch was flipped, and the switch was not one that Ashford was going to enjoy. Mr. Vale, with respect, I have a photograph of her entering this building 11 months ago. Do you? I do. Through which entrance? The service entrance on 63rd. Mr. Ashford, the service entrance on 63rd serves this building and 4 others. It serves a total of 940 residential units. Tell me, did you also photograph her leaving? A pause. No. Then you photographed a woman entering a service entrance that services 940 units, and you have decided she lives in mine. Is that the argument you came here to make, Mr. Ashford? Mr. Vale, I am not a man who is easily. You are a man, Ronan said, who came to my door at 9 in the morning without an appointment, without a referral, without a reason to inquire about a woman you say is not your wife, is not your daughter, is not your sister, is not your employee, and is not your legal concern in any capacity I am required to recognize. I have been patient with you because your father did a small favor for a friend of mine in 1994. That patience is now spent. Darby. Sir, show Mr. Ashford to the elevator. With pleasure, sir. Mr. Vale. Mr. Ashford. If she is here. Ronan Vale took one step forward. He did not raise his voice. He did not raise his hand. He took exactly one step forward, and Graham Ashford, a man who was taller than Ronan Vale by 2 inches and younger by 6 years, and who had built an entire life around never being the one who stepped back. Step back. If she were here, Ronan said quietly, which she is not, a man who spoke her name in my foyer, the way you just spoke it in my foyer, would not leave this building through the front door, Mr. Ashford. He would leave it through a side entrance. Most residents do not know, exists in a condition most residents would not want to see. Do you understand what I'm telling you? Are you threatening me? I am explaining to you the architecture of my building. Good morning, Mr. Ashford. Graham Ashford's face had gone white around the mouth. He turned. He walked into the elevator. The doors closed. Darby pressed a button on the intercom panel, a button Seraphine had never seen him press in 11 months, and the elevator began to descend, and somewhere below a second elevator was activated and a call was made to a man in the lobby who was not actually a doorman, and by the time Graham Ashford reached the ground floor, he would be escorted through the lobby in a manner so smooth and so pleasant that he would not realize until he was already on the sidewalk that he had not in fact been allowed to walk out on his own. Ronan Vale did not move for almost a full minute after the elevator doors closed. Then he walked to the library. He unlocked the door. He opened it. Seraphine was still on the floor. She looked up at him. Her face was wet. She had not realized her face was wet. He was here, she said. He was here. He knows I'm here. He suspects you're here. He does not know. And after the conversation we just had, he will not be able to afford the word suspect any longer. He will have to choose. Either he will commit to the suspicion, in which case he will commit a crime I can document, or he will release the suspicion, in which case he will go on with his life, believing you have disappeared into a service entrance that serves 940 units, and he will spend the rest of his money and the rest of his patience looking for you in the other 939. That is the choice I just placed in front of him. He'll commit to it. I expect he will. Then I will document the crime, Miss Hale. She stared up at him. You wanted him to come here. I did not want him to come here. I expected him to come here. There is a difference. A man who has controlled a woman by surveillance for 3 years does not give up surveillance voluntarily. He panics. He escalates. He appears at doors. I simply made sure the door he appeared at was mine and not yours. Mr. Vale. Miss Hale. How long have you known? He looked at her for a long moment. How long have I known what? That he's been watching the building. A pause, a real pause, the first pause Ronan Vale had allowed himself in front of her. 3 weeks. Her breath left her. 3 weeks, she whispered. A man took a photograph of you at the service entrance. The doorman reported it to my security chief. My security chief reported it to me. I ran the photographer's license plate. The plate came back to a private investigation firm. The firm came back to a retainer. The retainer came back to an attorney. The attorney came back to Graham Ashford. That was 3 weeks ago, Miss Hale. You've known for 3 weeks. I have known for 3 weeks that a man named Graham Ashford was paying a man to photograph a woman named Seraphine Hale entering my building. I did not know until last night that the woman being photographed was being photographed because she was a woman in fear. I thought until last night that she was being photographed because she was a woman in love and a jealous man was tracking her. A jealous man tracking a woman is a private matter. A terrified man tracking a woman is a crime. Last night at 11:47, when you said the word yet, the matter ceased to be private. 11:47. That was when you said yet. I checked the kitchen clock as you said it. Why? Because I needed to know the exact minute the matter ceased to be private, Miss Hale. I keep records. She put her face in her hands. I should have told you. No. I should have. No, Miss Hale. You owed me nothing. You owed your employer 8 hours of labor and the honest application of it. That is what I paid for. That is what I received. Anything beyond that was yours to give or withhold. You withheld it. That was your right. I am not angry with you. You're not angry with me. I am angry with him. She lowered her hands. What are you going to do? I am not going to tell you by going down. Mr. Vale, I am not going to tell you, Miss Hale, because if I tell you, you will carry the knowledge of it, and if you carry the knowledge of it, you will flinch the next time somebody asks you a question about him, and if you flinch, a lawyer somewhere will notice the flinch, and the flinch will become a deposition, and the deposition will become a problem. You will not carry the knowledge of it. You will carry the relief of it. That is the only thing I am willing to let you carry. That's not fair. No, it is not. But it is the condition under which I am willing to do what I am about to do, and you are not in a position to negotiate the conditions, Miss Hale. You are in a position to accept them or decline them. Which do you choose? She was silent for a long moment. Her hands were in her lap. Her hands had stopped shaking. She had not noticed when. I accept them. Good. Mr. Vale? Yes. The notebook. What about it? He was holding his left side when he came out of the elevator. When he was standing in the foyer, I could hear him through the intercom. I heard him shift his weight. He always holds his left side when the notebook is in his inside jacket pocket. When it's not there, he doesn't. He was holding his left side, sir. He has the notebook on him. Right now, in the elevator. Ronan Vale became very, very still. You are certain. I lived with the sound of that notebook for 2 years, Mr. Vale. I am certain. He turned without another word and walked out of the library. His phone was already at his ear before he crossed the threshold. The door did not close behind him. Seraphine heard his voice low and even in the hallway. He's still in the building. He has it on him, inside left pocket. Do not let him reach the car. There was a pause. I don't care how you do it, Mikhail. Do it clean. Do it now. Another pause. Yes, bring it to me. The call ended. Seraphine sat on the floor of the library, and she listened to the footsteps walking away, and she listened to the front door of the penthouse click quietly shut, and she realized with a kind of stunned and disbelieving clarity that a man she had worked for in silence for 11 months had just in the space of one morning redirected the entire architecture of her fear, had taken it off her shoulders and placed it on his own, and walked out of the room carrying it. She did not know yet that 12 minutes later, in a service corridor of a parking garage on 64th Street, a man named Mikhail, who had once been something other than a driver, would stop Graham Ashford with a polite smile and a folded $20 bill and a question about the time. She did not know yet that during the 4 seconds it took Graham Ashford to look at the folded 20 and wonder why a driver was handing it to him, a second man standing behind him would reach into the inside left pocket of his jacket and out again, in a motion so practiced it registered on no security camera in the city. She did not know yet that by 11 o'clock that morning, a small black notebook with a cracked spine and a gold corner on the front right would be sitting on Ronan Vale's desk, open to the page with her name on it, and a man with a very steady hand would be drawing a new line, not through her name, but through Graham Ashford's. She only knew that she was sitting on the floor of a library in a building that did not belong to her, wearing a uniform that was new with an egg cup that was empty and a napkin that was folded, and that for the first time in 3 years, no one in the world knew where she was except one man, and that man had just walked out of the room to correct the record on her behalf and had not asked for anything in return and had not said her first name on his way out the door. He had, however, closed the door behind him, but he had not locked it. She did not leave the library for 1 hour and 42 minutes. She could not have said afterward what she did during those 102 minutes. She did not read. She did not read. She did not clean. She sat on the floor with her back against the bookshelf, and she stared at the door that had not been locked, and she waited for a man she had worked for in silence for 11 months to come back and tell her whether she was still alive. At 11:04, footsteps in the hallway, not Ronan's. She knew Ronan's footsteps. Ronan's footsteps were slow and even and did not apologize for themselves. These were lighter, quicker, and carried a small stutter at the end of every third step, and that was how she knew before the knock came that it was Mr. Darby. Miss Hale? Yes, Mr. Darby. Mr. Vale has returned. He asks if you would join him in his study. His study? Yes, Miss Hale. I've never been in his study. No, Miss Hale. Nobody has been in his study except Mr. Vale, his attorney, and myself in 19 years. Today you will be the fourth. She stood. Her legs had gone to sleep under her, and she did not feel them come back until she was halfway down the hallway, walking behind Mr. Darby, who did not look back once to check that she was following. He knew she was following. Where else was she going to go? The study door opened before they reached it. Ronan Vale was standing just inside. He was not looking at her. He was looking at his desk. On the desk was a small black notebook with a cracked spine and a gold corner on the front, and a rubber band loose beside it, and a single glass of water untouched. Thank you, Darby. Sir. The door closed behind her. She stood just inside the door. She could not make her feet walk any farther into the room. The notebook was 6 feet away from her. It had been for 3 years the single object in the world she had been most afraid of, and now it was sitting on a desk, and a rubber band was lying beside it, and a man she barely knew was standing over it with his hands folded behind his back. Miss Hale. Yes, sir. Come and look. I don't want to. Come and look, Miss Hale. You need to see it. Once. And then you will never have to see it again. She walked to the desk. She did not look at the notebook. She looked at the wood of the desk and the rubber band and the glass of water and the edge of Ronan Vale's cuff and the small silver cuff link, a plain silver bar, no stone, no engraving, and she looked at everything on the desk except the notebook, because the notebook was the thing. Open it. Sir, open it, Miss Hale. I will not open it for you. It needs to be your hand. Her hand went forward. She watched it go forward as if it were someone else's hand. She opened the cover. The first page was a list of names. She did not recognize the first 6. The 7th was her mother's. The 8th was her father's. The 9th was her sister who lived in Michigan, whom Graham had never met. The 10th was a woman Seraphine had worked with at a hair salon in 2020 for 5 months, a woman she had forgotten existed, a woman who had been kind to her once during a bad afternoon. Graham had written her name down. Graham had written all of their names down. The 11th name was Seraphine's own. Next to her name in a different ink were 3 small letters. Mine. Her hand closed over the page. I can't. You can. Turn the page. She turned the page. The second page was columns, dates, dollar amounts, initials. She did not understand most of it, but she understood enough. Graham had been paying people, paying them for information, paying them for favors, paying them for access. There was a date in April of the previous year and a dollar amount in 3 initials, JRM. And she stared at the initials for a full 5 seconds before she understood that JRM was her mother's oncologist and that Graham had paid her mother's oncologist $900 in April of last year for something, and her mother had died the following July. She put her hand on the edge of the desk. Sir, I see it. Sir, he paid her doctor. I see it, Miss Hale. Her doctor. Sit down. I can't. Sit down, Miss Hale, now. She sat. Mr. Darby, who had not left the room after all who had been standing silently by the door the entire time, was suddenly at her elbow with the glass of water from the desk, and he was pressing it gently into her hand, and he was saying in the first warm voice she had ever heard him use, Small sips, Miss Hale, small sips. Breathe between them. That's it. That's right. She drank, she breathed, she drank again. Ronan Vale had not moved from the desk. He was watching her the way a doctor watches a patient coming out of anesthesia, close, careful, unhurried, waiting for the moment she could be spoken to again. The moment came. Miss Hale. Yes, sir. I need you to understand something. Yes, sir. What is in this notebook will not be used against your mother's doctor or any other person whose initials appear in it in a court of law. Not because they do not deserve it, some of them do, but because a court of law is a slow instrument and your life does not have time for slow instruments, and I do not intend to waste it on them. Do you understand what I am telling you? I think so. I am telling you that this notebook is not evidence, Miss Hale. It is a map. It is a map of everyone Graham Ashford has touched. Bought, threatened, or owned in the last 3 years. And I am going to spend the next several weeks walking that map one name at a time, and at the end of the walk, each of those names will owe something to me and nothing to him. Do you understand the difference that makes? It means, it means he has no one left, Miss Hale. A man like Graham Ashford is not a man. He is a web. Cut the web and the spider is only a spider. And a spider on its own, Miss Hale, is a very small thing. She nodded. She could not speak. Now, one more question, and then I will not ask you about him again for a very long time. Yes, sir. Your sister. In Michigan. Yes. Does she know? No. Has he ever contacted her? Not that she's told me, but she doesn't tell me everything. We weren't close. Not after I got engaged. He didn't like her. He said she was a bad influence. I stopped calling her. She stopped calling me. It's been almost 2 years since I've heard her voice. What's her name? Miriam Hale. Address. I don't know the street. She's in Ann Arbor. She teaches second grade at a school called Burns Park. That's all I know. That is enough. He picked up the phone on his desk. He dialed a number that was not in his contacts, a number he knew from memory. He waited. Someone picked up. Carolyn. Ronan. I need a woman in Ann Arbor by 7 tonight. Miriam Hale teaches second grade at Burns Park. Nothing dramatic. A coffee shop. A conversation. She needs to know that a man named Graham Ashford may attempt to contact her within the next 72 hours, and that she is to do nothing, say nothing, and contact a number I will give you, which you will give to her, which is to be memorized and not written down. Her sister is alive, is safe, and is with me. That is all she is to be told. Yes. Thank you, Carolyn. He hung up. Seraphine was crying again. She had not wanted to cry in this room. She had been determined not to. She was crying anyway without sound, the tears walking down her face in a slow, straight line, and she had no hand free to wipe them because one hand was holding the glass of water and the other was clenched in her lap. Mr. Darby, without a word, put a handkerchief on the arm of her chair. She picked it up. Mr. Vale. Miss Hale. Why? He did not answer immediately. He walked to the window. He put his hands in his pockets. He stood there for a long moment, looking out at a city he owned too much of, and when he spoke without turning around. I had a sister. The tears on her face stopped moving. She was 9 years younger than I was. Her name was Elena. When she was 22, she met a man who was a version of your Graham Ashford, only less careful. I did not know. I was busy. I was building all of this. I was not paying attention. She told my mother told me. I did not act quickly enough. I told myself I would handle it the following week. On the Thursday of the following week, Miss Hale, my sister, walked in front of a train at the 77th Street station, and the man who drove her to it was never punished because by the time I arrived at the kind of power that could have punished him, the man was already dead of natural causes, and my punishment had nowhere to go. She could not breathe. That was 9 years ago. I have been the kind of man I am now for 9 years. I have told no one the story I just told you. Not Darby, not my attorney, not my mother who died 2 years after Elena did, and who went to her grave believing her daughter had taken her own life because of a sadness with no name. There was a name, Miss Hale. The name was Thomas Ree. I can say his name now out loud in this room and nothing will happen because he has been dead for 8 years and I cannot reach him, and the failure of that will be on my chest until the day I die. He turned. You said the word yet last night, Miss Hale, and I heard my sister's voice in it. That is why. That is the entire why. Do not mistake it for affection. Do not mistake it for attraction. Do not mistake it for charity. This is a debt I owe to a dead girl, and you are the first opportunity the world has given me to pay a single dollar of it. If you had been a man, I would still be doing this. If you had been 60 years old, I would still be doing this. If you had been my own employee of 11 years instead of 11 months, I would still be doing this. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Good. Then we will not speak of it again. Darby. Sir, please return Miss Hale to the library. She will finish her shift. She will eat lunch in the staff dining room. She will see her name on her chair. She will continue her duties for the rest of the day as though nothing has happened, because nothing has happened that is her responsibility to carry. Clear. Clear, sir. Miss Hale. Yes, sir. The notebook will be destroyed within the hour. You have my word. You will never see it again. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Go back to work. She stood. Her legs were steadier than they had any right to be. She walked to the door. At the threshold, she turned because there was something she had to say, and if she did not say it now, she would not say it, and she would regret not saying it for the rest of her life. Mr. Vale, Miss Hale, I'm sorry about Elena. She watched his face very carefully. She saw nothing move. She saw nothing change. She saw, however, that for a fraction of a second his eyes went to a small silver picture frame on the corner of his desk, a frame she had not noticed, a frame that was turned slightly away from the room, and then his eyes came back. Thank you, Miss Hale. Yes, sir. She left. Mr. Darby closed the door behind her. In the hallway on the walk back to the library, she did not speak. Mr. Darby did not speak either. But at the door to the library, before he opened it for her, he paused with his hand on the handle, and he said in a voice that was so quiet she almost missed it. He is a good man, Miss Hale. I know he does not seem like one. I know he does not want to seem like one. But I have worked for him for 19 years, and I am telling you because it may help you sleep tonight, he is a good man. That is all I have to say. He opened the door. She walked in. He closed it behind her. At 12:14 that afternoon, Mr. Darby himself brought her a lunch tray, soup, bread, an apple, a small piece of chocolate wrapped in gold foil. He set it on the writing desk. He did not speak. He left. She ate every bite. At 1:47, she took a single piece of chocolate out of her uniform pocket. She had saved it without meaning to, and she held it in her hand for a long moment, and then she ate it too because her mother had always told her that small, sweet things were for the end of hard days. And her mother had been right about some things. At 3:22, she heard the front door of the penthouse open and close 3 times in quick succession, the way a door opens and closes when men are carrying things in and out of it. At 4:05, she heard a car pull away from the service entrance downstairs, a sound she could hear faintly even from the 39th floor because the ventilation in the library opened onto the service shaft. At 4:47, the intercom in the library clicked once, and Ronan Vale's voice came through it, not loud, not warm, just there. Miss Hale. Yes, sir. The matter is concluded. Sir, the notebook is destroyed. The photographer's retainer has been terminated. The attorney has been informed that further representation of Mr. Ashford's interests against you will not be tolerated by this office. The licensing board employee has been reassigned. Your cosmetology license has been reinstated as of 3 o'clock this afternoon. Your credit file has been cleaned. Your driver's license, which Mr. Ashford had flagged, has been unflagged. Your mother's grave has a new groundskeeper as of this morning who will be paid from my office and who has been instructed to photograph any man who visits it other than your father and to send those photographs to me. Is there anything else you would like me to handle? She could not speak. Miss Hale? No, sir. Then we are concluded. Sir? Yes. What about Mr. Ashford? Himself, what happens to him? A long pause. Mr. Ashford will wake up tomorrow morning, Miss Hale, in the apartment he currently lives in. His key card will not work. His phone will not work. His bank cards will not work. His driver will not answer. His attorney will not return his calls. His father will receive at 7 in the morning a package containing photocopies of certain pages from a certain notebook in a short handwritten note and explaining that the family's reputation is a house of cards and that I am currently holding the bottom card and that I will release it at any time of my choosing. If Mr. Ashford ever speaks your name again, looks at a photograph of you again, or passes within 1 block of any building you enter for the remainder of his natural life. His father is a practical man. His father will handle it from there. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir? Good. Finish your shift, Miss Hale. Mr. Darby will see you to the dining room for supper at 6. You will eat at your chair. You will sleep tonight. You will lock your door. You will wake up tomorrow. That is all you are required to do. Yes, sir. Miss Hale? Yes, sir. You said my sister's name out loud in my office today. I have not heard that name spoken in my own home in 6 years. Thank you. The intercom clicked off. Seraphine Hale sat down on the library floor. She did not cry. She did not tremble. She did not speak. She sat on the floor of a library in a building she did not own in a uniform that had been new that morning, And she listened to the quiet of a city that had, for the first time in 3 years, stopped being a city that was looking for her. At 6 o'clock on the dot, Mr. Darby came to get her. He walked her to the staff dining room. He pulled out a chair. On the back of the chair, on a small brass plate, was her name. She sat. She ate. And 2 floors below her, in a study that had not been entered by a fourth person, in 19 years, a man was standing very still in front of a small silver picture frame on the corner of his desk. He had turned the frame finally to face the room. In it was a photograph of a young woman with dark hair, laughing at something outside the camera, a young woman who had been 22 years old and would never be older than that, a young woman named Elena Vale. Ronan Vale looked at his sister's face for a long time. Then quietly, in a voice no one heard, he said, "One," and he turned off the light. 3 days passed. That was how she measured them afterward. Not in hours, not in shifts. In the number of mornings she had woken up and not been afraid, which was 3, and which was more than she had managed in a row since she was 22 years old. On the first morning, she had waited for the phone to ring. It did not ring. On the second morning, she had waited for the lobby buzzer. It did not buzz. On the third morning, she had woken up without waiting for anything. And that was the morning she understood, deep in a place she had not been able to access for 3 years, that the waiting was over. And then on the fourth morning, everything changed again. She was in the kitchen at 5:58, 2 minutes early, because being 2 minutes early was one of the 3 things Graham Ashford had trained into her bones that she had not yet been able to untrain, and she was measuring coffee into the machine with hands that no longer shook when Mr. Darby walked in. "Miss Hale." "Yes, Mr. Darby." "Mr. Vale would like you to have breakfast with him this morning." Her hand stopped moving. "I'm sorry." "Breakfast, Miss Hale, at the dining room table. At 7. He has asked me to inform you that this is not a summons, not a correction, and not a matter of household concern. It is an invitation. You may decline it. He has asked me to be very clear with you that you may decline it, and that declining it will have no effect on your employment, your pay, your housing, or his regard for you." Those were his exact words. "His regard for you." She set the coffee scoop down. "Mr. Darby." "Yes, Miss Hale." "I don't know what to do with an invitation." "No, Miss Hale, I didn't imagine you did. May I offer advice?" "Please." "When a man like Mr. Vale issues an invitation, Miss Hale, he has already spent several hours deciding whether he has the right to issue it. He would not issue it if he did not believe you would, given enough time, want to accept it. I suggest you give yourself enough time." "How much time do I have?" "1 hour, Miss Hale." "Mr. Darby?" "Yes." "What do I wear?" "Your uniform, Miss Hale, always your uniform. He does not want you to change anything about yourself for this. That is the entire point. If he had wanted you to come as a woman at a dinner party, he would have bought you a dress. He did not. He asked me to ask you to breakfast. Come as yourself." "As myself?" "Yes, Miss Hale." She stood in the kitchen for a full 60 seconds after Mr. Darby left. She stared at the coffee scoop. She stared at the coffee. She picked up the scoop and she finished measuring the coffee, because the coffee still needed to be measured and her hands still knew how to do that. And in a world that had gone strange overnight, the hands that still knew how to do old small things were the hands that kept her standing. At 7 o'clock, she walked to the dining room. Ronan Vale was already there. He was not seated at the head of the table. He was seated halfway down one long side of it, and across from him, at an angle that was neither formal nor presumptuous, a second place had been set. A small vase sat between the 2 settings. A single white flower was in the vase. She did not know what kind of flower it was. She knew, however, that it had not been cut that morning from a grocery store. It had come from somewhere else. "Miss Hale." "Mr. Vale." "Please sit." She sat. "I want to say 3 things," he said, "before any food arrives, because I do not want you to have to eat while I am saying them. Is that acceptable?" "Yes, sir." "First, I have been watching you for 3 days. Not in the way that man watched you. In the way an employer watches an employee he has begun to take personal interest in. You have slept. You have eaten. You have worked. You have used the lock on your door 3 nights in a row. You have not cried where anyone can see you. I know these things because Darby tells me, and Darby does not lie. I am telling you that I have been watching because I do not ever want you to wonder, and I do not ever want you to be surprised, and the surest way to prevent both is to say it plainly. I am watching. You may ask me to stop at any time and I will stop. Is there anything you would like to ask of me on that subject? Not yet, sir. Good. Second thing, your sister Miriam was met on Tuesday evening in a coffee shop in Ann Arbor by a woman named Carolyn. Miriam listened to what Carolyn had to say. Miriam cried. Miriam asked for a phone number. Miriam was given one. Miriam memorized it. Miriam then asked Carolyn to tell you that she is sorry. That is the word Miriam used. Sorry, she said she should have called you. She said she let a man keep her from her sister for 2 years, and she will carry that for the rest of her life. And she is not asking your forgiveness because she has not earned it, but she is asking for permission to call you. When you are ready, not before. Do you understand what I am telling you? Seraphine's hand had gone to her mouth. She did not remember putting it there. Yes, sir. Would you like her number? Yes, sir. It is on the card under your napkin. She lifted the napkin, a small cream-colored card, a phone number in black ink. She did not unfold it. She held it in her hand. Thank you, Mr. Vale. Third thing. Yes, sir. Graham Ashford left the country yesterday afternoon. Her breath caught. He did not leave of his own accord. His father put him on a plane to a family property in Portugal with a 2-year allowance and a passport that has been flagged in certain ways I will not bore you with. He will not be permitted to return. Not for 2 years. Not for 5. Possibly not ever. The decision was his father's, not mine. I did not ask for it. I asked only that Graham Ashford cease to exist within the geographic boundaries of your life. His father chose the instrument. The instrument was Portugal. Do you understand what I am telling you? He's gone. He is gone, Miss Hale. She set the card down on the table. She folded her hands over it. She closed her eyes. She did not cry. She did not speak. She sat with her eyes closed for almost a full minute, and Ronan Vale did not move, did not speak, did not reach for anything. He simply sat and waited for her to come back to the room. When she opened her eyes, she said, "May I have coffee?" Of course. He poured it himself. Breakfast came. She ate half of it, and then she ate the rest of it, and she was surprised again by how hungry she was. Ronan ate a single piece of toast and drank 2 cups of black coffee and watched the street below through the window without turning his head. They did not speak for a long time, and the silence was not awkward. It was the silence of 2 people who had, through no particular plan, stopped needing to fill the air between them. At the end of the meal, she said, "Mr. Vale, Miss Hale, may I ask you something?" "You may ask me anything. I reserve the right not to answer." "That's fair. Go on." "The picture on your desk." A very small pause. "Yes. You turned it toward the room after I left, didn't you?" He looked at her for a long moment. "How did you know that?" "Because the next morning when I walked past the study door, it was open and I saw the frame and it was facing out. And Mr. Darby told me that frame has been facing the wall for 6 years, and I just knew." "You just knew?" "Yes, sir." He set down his coffee cup. "Yes, Miss Hale, I turned the picture toward the room." "Why?" "Because I realized after you left my office that day that I had been hiding my sister's face from my own life, and that hiding her face did not honor her. It preserved her. It did not honor her. And a woman stood in my office on Monday and said my sister's name out loud to me, and I understood standing there after she left that I had been a coward for 6 years. And I had not known I was a coward for 6 years. And I did not want to be a coward for a 7th. Mr. Vale. "Yes." "You are not a coward." He did not answer immediately. He picked up his napkin, he folded it, he set it down. "Miss Hale?" "Yes, sir." "You are a woman I have known for 11 months and 12 days. You do not know enough about me to make that statement." "I know enough, sir." "Miss Hale." "I know enough." He looked at her. For the first time since she had met him, Ronan Vale did not know what to say next. She watched it happen across his face, the small, brief surrender of a man who had always, in every room he had ever walked into, known what to say next. And she watched him accept the fact that in this one specific room, on this one specific morning, across from this one specific maid, he did not. "Thank you, Miss Hale." "You're welcome, sir." That was the end of the first breakfast. There were others. On the 5th morning, he invited her again. She accepted. On the 6th, she did not wait for an invitation. She simply walked to the dining room at 7, and a second place setting was already waiting, and neither of them mentioned it. By the end of the second week, it was no longer a negotiation. It was a habit. By the end of the fourth week, Mr. Darby had stopped asking her whether she would be joining Mr. Vale for breakfast and had started asking her instead whether Mr. Vale would be joining her because Mr. Vale occasionally had morning calls in the study, and on those mornings, Seraphine ate alone, and the second place setting was still laid because Mr. Darby had decided without asking anyone's permission that the second setting was a permanent feature of the dining room now. She called her sister on a Wednesday night. She used the kitchen phone. She did not ask permission. She did not announce it. She simply dialed the number on the cream-colored card, a number she had now memorized and burned, because Mr. Darby had told her in a quiet aside that Mr. Vale preferred her not to keep written numbers. And she listened to the ring, and a woman answered on the third one, and the woman's voice said, "Hello," and Seraphine said, "It's me." And her sister Miriam, who had not heard her voice in almost 2 years, began to call, and Seraphine stood in the kitchen holding the phone with both hands, and she said over and over, "It's all right, it's all right, it's all right," as if she were comforting a child, when in fact she was comforting a woman 9 years older than her, a woman who had once taught her how to braid her own hair, a woman who had apologized to a stranger in a coffee shop in Ann Arbor a week earlier because she had not been brave enough to call her own little sister for 2 years. They talked for 47 minutes. When she hung up the phone, Ronan Vale was standing in the kitchen doorway. He had not come in. He had not spoken. He had simply stood there at the threshold with his hands in his pockets, and he had waited for her to be finished. "How long have you been there, sir?" 6 minutes. "Why?" "Because Darby told me you had made a phone call, and I was not going to walk in while you were still on it, and I was not going to ask you about it afterward, but I wanted to be near enough that if you needed someone, when you hung up, I would not be 2 floors away." She stared at him. "That is the kindest thing anyone has ever done for me, sir." "That is a very low bar, Miss Hale." "I know it is, sir. I'm aware of that." "Yes, sir." He stepped into the kitchen. He crossed to the counter. He put a kettle on. He did this himself, which she had still not gotten used to, and which Mr. Darby had told her she would never get used to, because in 19 years Mr. Darby had not gotten used to it either. "Miss Hale." "Yes, sir." "Do you still call me sir because you are afraid of me, or because you are in the habit of it?" "I don't know, sir." "Would you be willing to find out?" "How, sir?" "Try my first name, once, out loud. See how it feels. If it feels wrong, you may go back to sir. I will not mention it. I will not be hurt. I simply want to know, and I suspect you want to know too." She looked at him. "Ronan." He nodded. "How did it feel?" "Like I stole something." "From whom?" From a woman who is allowed to call you Ronan, which I'm not." "Miss Hale." Yes, sir." "Whose house is this?" "Yours, sir." "Whose staff am I paying?" "Yours, sir." "Who decides what names are used in this house?" You do, sir." "Then on my authority as the man who decides what names are used in this house, I am telling you that your name for me when we are alone in a kitchen or a dining room or a library is Ronan. When we are in front of Mr. Darby or any other staff, you may continue to use sir, because Darby has earned the formality, and I will not disrupt 19 years of routine on Darby's behalf. But when it is you and me, Miss Hale, it is Ronan. Are we clear?" "Yes, sir." "Miss Hale." "Yes, Ronan." "Better. And my name for you, if you will allow it, is Seraphine." "Yes, sir." "Ronan." "Yes." "Good. The kettle is boiling." She did not remember afterward what they talked about that night. She remembered the tea. She remembered that he made it and she did not, and that this had been a small, quiet inversion of a rule she had thought was permanent. She remembered that he asked her about Miriam, the one question, "How is she?" And then silence, and then listening, and that he listened the way he had listened on the first night, which was the way no one had ever listened to her before. She remembered that at 11:47 she checked the clock because Ronan Vale had taught her that 11:47 was a time worth checking. She said quietly, looking into her teacup, "I don't know who I am anymore." And Ronan Vale across the island put down his own cup. "Say more. For 3 years I was a woman who was afraid. That was the whole of me. There was nothing else. I was fear with a body wrapped around it. And now the fear is gone, and I don't know what the body's for. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like. I don't know who my friends are. I don't know whether I want to go back to hair or whether I want to do something else or whether I want to keep cleaning your house for the rest of my life because your house is the only place I have ever been safe. I don't know, Ronan. I don't know anything. Seraphine. Yes, that is not a problem. It feels like one. It feels like one because you have never had the privilege of not knowing before. Not knowing is the condition of a free person. A frightened person always knows. A frightened person always knows where the exits are and where the man is, and what time she has to be home, and what words are safe and what words are not. A free person does not know any of those things because a free person does not need to know any of those things. You are not lost, Seraphine. You are simply for the first time in your life at liberty. She put down her tea. I don't know how to be at liberty. No one does at first. You learn it the way you learn to be afraid. One day at a time. One decision at a time. You can practice in this house if you like. You can practice until you are steady enough to practice somewhere else. Or you can practice here forever. The house does not have an opinion. Does the man who owns the house have an opinion? A long pause. The man who owns the house, Ronan said slowly, has decided that his opinion is not the relevant one. Not on this, not ever, not for you. The man who owns the house will support any decision you make, including decisions that take you out of this house. That is a promise I make to you now in this kitchen at 11:49 in the evening with no witness. Do you understand what that kind of promise is worth? Yes. What is it worth? Everything. Yes, Seraphine, everything. She sat in the quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Ronan, yes. Tell me about Elena. He did not answer for almost 30 seconds. She watched him decide. She watched the decision take shape behind his eyes the way a storm takes shape behind a window. And then for the first time in 6 years, Ronan Vale began to speak his sister's name out loud, without a desk between him and the listener, without a picture frame to protect him, without a distance to hide in. He talked for almost an hour. And Seraphine Hale, who had not known 3 months earlier that a man like this existed in the world, sat across from him at the kitchen island of a penthouse on the 39th floor. And she listened the way she had always wished someone would listen to her. And she understood at some point during the telling that she was no longer hearing a story about a stranger's dead sister. She was hearing a man give her the piece of himself that he had never in his entire life given to anyone. When he was finished, she did not say anything for a long time. Then she stood. She walked around the island. She did not touch him. She stopped 2 feet away and she said very quietly, "Thank you, Ronan, for telling me." And Ronan Vale, for the first time in 6 years, lowered his head. Not to her, not in shame. Simply lowered his head the way a man does when a weight he has been carrying alone has for one small moment in a quiet kitchen been acknowledged by another living person. And Seraphine Hale stood there 2 feet away, and she did not reach for him, and she did not leave, and she waited the way he had waited for her in a library 3 weeks earlier, until he was ready to lift it again. When he did, he looked at her. And for the first time in her life, Seraphine Hale looked back at a man and did not drop her eyes. 6 months later, she quit. She did it on a Tuesday morning at breakfast, across the same table where she had eaten the first meal of her new life, and she did it the way she had practiced saying it in her head for 2 weeks, which was quickly before she lost the nerve. Ronan, Seraphine, I want to give you my 2 weeks' notice. He set down his coffee cup. He did not set it down hard. He set it down the way he set everything down, carefully on purpose, exactly where he had decided to set it. All right, I want to go back to school. There's a program in the city. It's 9 months. It's a licensure upgrade. It would let me open my own place eventually. A small one, nothing grand. I've been looking at a storefront in Queens, near where my aunt used to live. I've been saving. I have enough for the first 6 months of tuition, and Miriam is going to help with the rest, and Seraphine. Yes, you don't have to justify it. You said, I want to give you my 2 weeks' notice. That was the whole sentence. Anything you have added after it is something you are offering me because you have been trained for many years to offer men explanations. I am not asking for one. You do not owe me one. Your notice is accepted. Your 2 weeks begin today. Is there anything else? Her eyes filled it. I thought you'd be angry. Why would I be angry? Because I'm leaving. Seraphine, I told you 6 months ago in this house that I would support any decision you made, including decisions that took you out of this house. Do you remember? Yes. Was I lying? No. Then why would I be angry? Because people say things and then they don't mean them. I am not people, Seraphine. I am one specific man in one specific kitchen. And I meant what I said and I still mean it. And I will continue to mean it for as long as you need me to mean it. Now, tell me about the storefront in Queens. She laughed. It surprised her. She had not expected to laugh at that exact moment in that exact conversation, but the laugh came out of her anyway, and Ronan Vale watched it come out of her, and for a very brief second, something in his face that had been held tight for a long time loosened. It's small, she said. 2 chairs, a back room. The window faces west, so the afternoon light is good. The rent is manageable. The neighborhood is mostly families, old couples, grandmothers, who haven't had their hair done properly in years because the only salon nearby closed during the pandemic. I want to do hair for women who haven't felt pretty in a long time, Ronan. That's what I want. I want to be the person who reminds them. That is an excellent reason to open a business. You think so? I think the women who walk into your chair will walk out different. I think you know something about what it is to not feel pretty for a long time, and I think that knowledge is going to be the most valuable thing in your storefront, and it is not something any business school teaches. Yes, Seraphine, I think so. Ronan, yes. Will you come to the opening? A pause. Do you want me to come to the opening? Yes. Then I will come to the opening. As my employer. As whatever you introduce me as. If you introduce me as your former employer, I will be your former employer. If you introduce me as a friend, I will be a friend. If you introduce me as the man who locked the kitchen door one night and asked you who hurt you, I will be that man. I will be whatever you decide I am on the day of the opening, Seraphine. That is your decision to make, not mine. She looked down at her coffee. Ronan, yes. I don't know yet. You don't have to know yet. I might not know for a long time. Then I will wait for a long time. Is there anything else about the notice we should discuss? No. Good. Eat your breakfast. It's getting cold. She ate her breakfast. The 2 weeks passed. On her last day, Mr. Darby came to her room at 5:50 in the morning and knocked on her door with the brass lock she had used every night for 6 months and 11 days, and when she opened it, he was holding a small gift-wrapped box in both hands. Mr. Darby, Miss Hale, it's too early for goodbyes. It is never too early for goodbyes, Miss Hale. Too late, perhaps. Never too early. May I come in? Of course. He came in. He did not sit. He stood just inside the doorway with the small box held in both hands, and he said, "In 19 years, Miss Hale, I have said goodbye to 16 members of this household staff. I have given none of them a gift. I am giving you one. I would like you to know that because I would like you to understand that what I am about to say to you is not something I say lightly. Mr. Darby, you changed this house, Miss Hale." Her breath caught. "I am an old man. I do not give speeches. I will not give one now, but I have watched Mr. Vale for 19 years, and in all 19 of them, he has been a man with every door in himself locked. You did not unlock those doors. I want to be clear. You did not unlock them. He unlocked them. But you were the first person in those 19 years who stood patiently on the outside of those doors without trying to pick the locks, and because of that, and only because of that, he was able to open them himself. I have watched it happen, Miss Hale. I have watched it happen slowly over 6 months, and I am telling you because you deserve to know that whatever happens next between the two of you or does not happen, you have already given him the single greatest gift any person has given him since his sister died. And he will never tell you that, so I am telling you." Seraphine could not speak. "Open the box, Miss Hale." She opened it. Inside was a small brass key on a simple ring. It's a key. It is the key to the staff entrance of this building, Miss Hale. You are no longer staff, but Mr. Vale has instructed me, should you ever need a safe place in this city at any hour for any reason for the rest of your life, this key is to open that door for you, and the security desk has been instructed to admit you without question, and the staff apartment on the 39th floor that you have lived in for the last 17 months is to be kept for you in perpetuity, unoccupied, maintained, available. You will never need it. I hope you will never need it, but it is yours. That is what the key is. Mr. Darby. Yes. I can't accept. You can miss Hale because it is not a gift of obligation, it is a gift of certainty. Mr. Vale would like you to be certain for the rest of your life that you have a place to go. You may never go. That is fine. But you will know. That is the point. You will know. She closed her hand around the key. Tell him, I will tell him whatever you would like me to tell him, Miss Hale. Tell him thank you. I will. Tell him she stopped. Tell him I don't have the words yet, but I will. Mr. Darby nodded once. He will understand, Miss Hale. He has been a man without words for a long time. He understands. He turned to leave. At the door he paused. Miss Hale. Yes, Mr. Darby. It has been the privilege of my professional life to pull out your chair at supper for the last 6 months. I will miss doing it. And Mr. Darby, who had worked in the house for 19 years and had not embraced a member of staff in any of them, put his hand briefly on Seraphine's shoulder just once lightly, the way a father does when a daughter leaves for college, and then he turned and walked away down the hall, and he did not look back, and Seraphine stood in her doorway holding a brass key in her hand, and she understood that some goodbyes are not for the person leaving. Some goodbyes are for the person staying behind, and they are harder, and they are quieter, and they are not spoken of afterward. She left the penthouse at 8 o'clock that morning. Ronan Vale was not at breakfast. A note was folded under the single white flower in the vase. Seraphine, I am not at breakfast because if I were at breakfast, I would ask you to stay, and you have earned a morning in which no man asks you to stay. Go, open the storefront, do the work. Be the woman the grandmothers and queens have been waiting for. The key you now have in your pocket is not a tether. It is a promise. I will be at the opening. I will bring flowers. I will introduce myself as whatever you introduce me as. Until then, the door is open. In both directions. R. She read it twice. She folded it. She put it in her pocket with the key. She walked out of the penthouse for the last time as a member of staff. The storefront opened on a Saturday in October. She had painted the walls herself a soft, warm cream, and Miriam had flown in from Michigan to help her hang the mirrors, and a neighbor 2 doors down had brought her a plant on the Wednesday before the opening and told her in broken English that the neighborhood had been waiting for this, and Seraphine had cried in the back room for 10 minutes and then washed her face and come back out and kept painting. On opening day, there was a line, not a long one. 11 women, mostly older. One of them brought her granddaughter. One of them brought a photograph of how she had worn her hair in 1978 and said, "Can you do this? It's been 47 years. Can you still do this?" And Seraphine, who had not held professional clippers in 3 years, looked at the photograph and looked at the woman's face and said, "Yes, ma'am, I can still do this." At 3:17 in the afternoon, the door chimed. She looked up from the chair. Ronan Vale was standing in the doorway of her shop holding a bouquet of white flowers. The same white flowers he had put on the breakfast table every morning for 6 months. She recognized them now. And he was wearing a suit, and he was waiting. She set down her scissors. She wiped her hands on her apron. She walked to him. The women in the shop had gone quiet. 11 pairs of eyes were on the man in the doorway and on the young woman who was walking toward him, and the grandmother in the chair with the 1978 photograph on her lap leaned over to her friend and whispered in a voice that was not quiet at all, "Oh, honey. Oh, look at that." Seraphine stopped in front of him. "Ronan." "Seraphine, you came. I said I would. You brought flowers. I said I would. What am I introducing you as?" He looked at her for a long moment. And then Ronan Vale, a man who had walked into 1,000 rooms in his life and had always been the one who decided how he was introduced, did something he had never done before. He waited. He waited for her to decide. She turned. She looked at the room, her room, the room she had painted with her own hands, the room full of women who had trusted her with their hair and their photographs and their 47 years, and she took a breath and she smiled and she said in a voice that did not shake, "Everyone, I'd like you to meet Ronan. He's the reason I had the courage to open this place. He's a friend." "A friend," said the grandmother with the 1978 photograph very loudly to her companion. "Hush, Dottie." "I didn't say anything." "You said it loud." Ronan Vale, the most powerful man in 3 boroughs, a man whose name appeared in the financial section of the paper on a weekly basis, a man whose foyer had caused Graham Ashford to physically step backward, blushed. It was the smallest blush in the history of blushes. It lasted less than 2 seconds. But Seraphine saw it, and Mr. Darby, who had quietly entered the shop behind his employer and was standing just inside the door with a second bouquet of flowers in his own hand, saw it, and 19 years of not seeing it made it for Mr. Darby the most important event of the afternoon. A friend, Ronan said. Yes, I'll accept that. For now, Seraphine said. For now, he agreed. She took the flowers from him. She took the second bouquet from Mr. Darby, and she hugged Mr. Darby, who did not know how to be hugged, and she laughed when he did not know how to be hugged, and she said, Mr. Darby, you are going to learn how to be hugged today, whether you like it or not. And Mr. Darby said very seriously, I will do my best, Miss Hale. Seraphine. Miss Hale, I'm afraid. At my age, new vocabulary is expensive. She laughed again. She had laughed more in the last 6 months than she had in the previous 10 years, and she was still not used to the sound of her own laugh, and she suspected she would not be used to it for a long time, and she had decided that that was all right. Some sounds were worth getting used to slowly. Ronan did not stay long. He never did. He shook the hands of the women who wanted their hands shaken, and he complimented the 1978 photograph when it was held up to him, and he ordered a trim and sat in the chair and let Seraphine cut his hair for the first and only time in his life. And when he paid her, he overpaid her by exactly $100, and she caught it, and she said, Ronan, you overpaid me by $100. And he said, did I? And she said, you know you did. And he said, consider it a tip. And she said, that's too much for a tip. And he said, Seraphine, let me tip my hairdresser. I have never had a hairdresser before. Let me do this correctly. She let him. He kissed her once on the top of her head on his way out of the shop the way a man kisses his sister. And then he and Mr. Darby walked out of the shop, and the bell on the door chimed behind them. And Seraphine stood by the cash register, holding a $100 overpayment in her hand. And the grandmother with the 1978 photograph said, Sweetheart, sweetheart, that is not a friend. I know, Dottie. You know. I know. But friend is what I can say today. Tomorrow is tomorrow. Today I said friend. Smart girl. I'm learning. You're doing fine, honey. You're doing fine. That night, after the last customer had left, after she had swept her own floor and counted her own till and turned her own key in her own lock, Seraphine Hale walked out onto the sidewalk in front of her shop, and she looked up at the window with her name on it in gold lettering, and she said her own name out loud to herself, the way she had said Ronan's name in a kitchen 7 months earlier, quietly as a test to see how it felt. It felt like hers. She walked to the subway. She rode home to the small apartment she had rented for herself in a building where no one knew her last name and no one was watching the door. She sat on her own couch. She ate her own dinner. She called her sister, who answered on the second ring and who said, How did it go? And Seraphine said, Miriam, I did it. I did it. I did it. And Miriam cried and Seraphine did not, because Seraphine had done her crying in the back room on Wednesday, and tonight was not for crying. Tonight was for the quiet, astonishing fact that a woman who had once been afraid of a man's footsteps in a hallway had in one single calendar year become a woman who owned a door and a key and a name and a chair. She went to bed at 10. She did not lock her bedroom door. She had the lock. She had used it every night for 16 months, but tonight in her own apartment, in her own building, in her own city, she decided she did not need it. She lay down on top of her covers. She looked at the ceiling. She said out loud to no one, to herself, to the woman she had been, and the woman she was becoming, he did not save me. And she smiled. I saved me. He just held the door. And Seraphine Hale, who was no longer a maid, no longer a victim, no longer a woman whose name lived in a notebook in another man's pocket, closed her eyes in her own bed, in her own apartment, in a city that had stopped looking for her. And she slept the deep, unwatched, unafraid sleep of a person who had finally, after a very long journey, come home to herself. The ghosts were gone. The fear was gone. The notebook was ash, and Seraphine Hale was free.